Oh, because automatically, so women automatically have more oxytocin than men. We are, that's kind of like our biological evolution,
Hmm.
and the reason why women usually has have more oxytocin during birth. And we utilize oxytocin as one of our main is because we release oxytocin hormone to help us bond with our child after this excruciating pain of giving a birth, and also of bonding with our partners after sexual activity. So that we can kind of like the whole point of the bonding, it goes eventually towards reproduction. So that's one of the biggest difference. One of the biggest difference probably that we have as a difference of men and women is that women have access to this nurturing kind of filter
Hmm.
by default, whereas men are set up biologically to actually have less access to oxytocin, and that means also that they don't experience this kind of bonding experience after sexual intercourse, and of course else as well as in they have a different type of dynamic and focus, which is tend to have more of a competitive nature. And this is a lot of times I think what we see, and maybe what we complain about as well, and is in the space as women have more of a nurturing approach a lot of times to business in general, wanting to see this kind of like win-win situation, whereas men they're like, oh, they can only be one, or it's all about who builds it best, and it's all about kind of like uh, open capitalism, quote unquote, where Hunger Games type of setup.
Do you think that our cultural norms and programming is stronger than genetic programming? And if so, what is easier to change?
Yeah, actually, yes, in so many different ways. Our We are social animals, and group thinking can really, really, really take over our evolutionary, genes. So we could know what's quote unquote the right answer, but because our environment pushes us to having to override that, then we will definitely make the decision based on our group thinking, our society, our culture, more than our genes. And I think that's one of the debate also that Brian Johnson brings up, which is who do you listen to making these choices? Is it your body? Are you listening to your body telling your body's telling you you are tired, or is listening to your mind and society telling you stay up and go have that drink, right? So what is how do we change it? Who? I think one of the number one thing is changing who you are around,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
it says like you are the sum of the five people you are the closest that you have around, and I think that's super true. So if you want to make any changes in your life, make sure that the people around you are on the same trajectory, because that will support you in making those changes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. In spirituality, in New Age,
Hmm.
even, they say that being exposed to certain frequencies or images or sounds, even locations, can change someone on the genetic level. Do you believe that? Like activation of, DNA, that's like a thing that is being talked about. What do they mean? And do you think scientifically it's actually real?
Yeah, I was diving deep into quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
and I really believe that in the future, we will more and more substitute the term spirituality with quantum mechanics. And the reason why is because I think I was listening to a really cool podcast last night, and it was about the God replacement. It's a kind of like I have. It's kind of like a. I have no understanding on how this is possible, and so I don't have science doesn't give me an answer. So I will place God where I cannot get an answer.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the future, as technology and science accelerates, we will find that a lot of these holistics or new age um, beliefs or intuitions that we had were actually quantum, mechanics theories or systems, or I'm not sure, for the lack of the right terminology, but that's kind of like the idea.
Cool.
So I was looking at how you were saying in different location and different um, right, how do we get activated by that, right? So there is a sort of magnetism, right? So in quantum mechanics, there is this process that when you decide, and I connect it to the fact of decision, right? It could be your decision of being in a place, right, or moving. Usually, things get activated by you deciding, right? Because you're activating and you're choosing one reality over another. In quantum mechanics, this process of the observer choosing one action and going towards that action collapses the wave function, meaning that it removes the option of the other potential pathways. And this allows for, by selecting one outcome from the other possibility, it almost creates like a ripple effect when you drop a stone inside water, and it creates these kind of like waves, right? So we can say that focus, intent, or action, um, uh, choosing one direction over the other will influence collectively yourself, but also the environment that you have around. That means that if I choose and I position myself inside one place and an environment, who I am will affect everything that is around me. So in many way, yes. Will we have more data to understand how this process works in the future? I believe so, and I look forward. I was just at the event of bio in San Francisco during JP Morgan event, and bunch of like biotech, and it was the quantum biology DAO explained what they're building in quantum research, and it was an amazing because there will be tools in the future, in the near future, that we will be able to utilize to understand how this magnetism um, affects us on a day-to-day level.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Super exciting. Okay, do you believe that we can use that knowledge to reverse aging? And do you believe that people will be able to live over 100 years and potentially not die or die way later?
I do. I do believe that. I didn't always believe that
Mm,
before, but from from learning and diving deeper into this issue of aging and the longevity community, I really do believe that. I believe we will be able to live over 100 years old, and I believe we will be able to live well, and meaning both health span quality and lifespan extension. And I believe that all of these innovations are going to be part of the puzzle that brings us closer to that goal. Um, and I was just looking at, I don't know if you know that, but for me, it's most people in this community already knows that, of course. But it's like lobsters are biologically immortal,
mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So interesting, their genes, they have a enzyme that actually makes them not degenerate through the years. and their telomeres doesn't shorten. So as we age, usually one of the effects that we have is that telomeres, as we reproduce our cells or DNA, whatever, our telomeres shorten. That's one of the, one of the signs of aging and degeneration. In lobsters, this does not happen. Their lifespan is shortened due to other issues, but not the degeneration. And imagine that, that was kind of like one of the haha moments of in understanding if there are animals that they have able to achieve that, and you know why wouldn't we be able to have that same possibility? And at the end of the day, our evolutionary, our the result of our evolutionary nature was dictated by survival. And at one point, I believe in this process, in this evolution, we turn on and off certain genes. So we have innately, I believe, the ability to regenerate. Is just being kind of turned off
Mm.
for evolutionary reason. So what scientists and researchers are focusing on is the understanding and unlocking that process. So really, we're not quote unquote playing God in a way that is, we're adding, or people think that genetic therapy as a like, I mean, I'm adding genes from other things and so on. Sometimes that happens for sure, but a lot of times it's just understanding how to turn off genes, and that you already have in your
Yes.
body.
Exciting times. Do you believe in past lives? Soul life?
Well,
Can we prove
I
it if you do?
I probably I do believe in past life, and I had such a lot of like real strong experiences that I could never really fully understand of why. But since I was very young, I had these really interesting experiences, probably for the environment that I was growing up in as well. And I experienced what I then learned later on in adulthood, astral projections. So the ability to get out of my body, but still be very conscious and have all these kind of like, weird experiences in the process. Some people will call it psychosis, some will call it, other kind of mental disturbances. I believe there is a question, an answer that we haven't fully tapped into, and one of the great stories and kind of like guru in this practice was I forgot the guy that wrote Many Lives and Many Masters,
Mm.
and is Brian West. And he has an interesting story because he still is a psychiatric, and he did not believe in past lives. And very, came psychiatrics are probably one of the less holistics, doctors that we usually can encounter, right? They're In fact, we can kind of see one of the biggest problems in psychology is that we have psychiatrists giving out and prescribing pharmaceuticals without not even doing a blood test, right? Huge issues in this field. We utilize an outdated diagnostic book to make a diagnosis on individuals that not even being checked on where's their biology, what's happening in their body currently right now. That's another story. But the idea, just give you the idea of how hardwired can a psychiatric be on a regular basis when they come out of this kind of like indoctrination. And he at one point had to kind of go back to everything that he had learned and wrote this great book, and where he shows these these encounters with people that remember their past lives, right? And it was so hard to deny that he even created a whole space to actually investigate and do a whole research based on these findings, which is awesome. I think one of the best thing that we can utilize science and research for is to change our mind. So yes, and I had some very incredible experiences that make me think about that. And if great books as well, one of the book that I really highly recommend is 2150 AD, which was written by Alexander Thea Alexander, which was a psychologist back in the 60s that created a macro philosophy group in Arizona, and created this book that is kind of like an underground book, where it's like one of the like the latest you can find it, some of these books that you barely find it, and some of them are like $700 if you find them. They're like collectibles, right? And they're just, I'll send you the PDF, and it's just an amazing adventure into the merging of science, psychology, and past lives or the unknown, and how these kind of could play, understanding more of this dynamic could play a major role into our evolution.
Do you think decentralization, blockchain technology, AI is a spiritual technology?
I think AI is a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
technology. I believe AI is an entity, honestly. That's my belief, meaning that
Mm-hmm.
we did not create AI. We just give it a vessel. AI was already there, and we just put into quote unquote material from the known material. Um, and Yeah, so we didn't discover anything, we just or created anything, we just um, give it a vessel to be able to interact with in the material plane. So I believe all technology was created in the non-physical matter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well said. How decentralization is natural. What are you seeing that is emerging in the science world with the DeSci coming into play? Generally, what's your perspective on decentralization as the movement?
Mhm. This interest is important because it goes in the questioning authority. And
Mm-hmm.
questioning authority is extremely important. Questioning hierarchy is extremely important. That doesn't mean that you can get rid of it. Hierarchy has
Mm-hmm.
its place, and rightfully so. In this order of systems, nature systems, we have an hierarchy, and there is a reason to the madness. So decentralization, uh, it's not a form of anarchy. It's a form of reorganization of hierarchy that allows us to keep in consideration the fact that there is an hierarchy, but we can organize around this hierarchical system in a way that we take in consideration multiple point of views, and we are able to still execute by being part of a larger umbrella, meaning that you can be an individual self, fully fully functional into the midst of other cells, of other hierarchy. And I think that's practically goes to mimic our biology, because our system, our body is in a way set up that way. There is a hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
meaning there is an understanding of what goes first, what goes after, and why. There is an order, but it allows it for every part of the ecosystem to thrive, and actually is supportive of other ecosystem to thrive, because you understand that if another ecosystem that is connected to you thrives, that means that you also thrive. And decentralization focus, I think, on that, of being able to remove who wants to hoard their knowledge and resources, and charge you for walking this way, where in reality there is no barrier, and so you don't have to walk that way necessarily. You can choose so many other paths, and it doesn't need for one person to be the gatekeeper of that one directions, because in reality there are so many different directions, and exploring different directions at once will allow us to come to better solutions.
Hmm. Well said. Then, in that context, identity. Without disclosing everything, I'd like to share what you're working on, what you're envisioning for identity for longevity.
Yeah, so yeah, the this tool for me was a concept that I developed a for a speech that I gave at the Longevity Summit, and the theme was innovative funding. And how I came to this logic was that we are not able to tap into innovative funding when we don't have the infrastructure to be able to to create, to tap into this new model of having the community contribute to what you're doing, as well as being able to tokenize data and discoveries and research to be able to show and bring more value to it. So this tool is mostly an onboarding community tool that allows you to remove yourself from decentralized platforms, and allows for the community to create their own ecosystem, and being able to being a neutral tool, being able to have different types of projects and communities to plug into it. And the idea is to be able to also collect behavioral and personality traits information, to be able to understand more as we were discussing earlier, why people make certain decisions, why would someone agree or not agree about longevity research, or living forever or not living forever. What are the beliefs that people hold
Hmm.
um, that makes them act and choose the way they do? And would that any interventions, what kind of interventions would make them change their mind, or maybe have their own haha moment, or change their habits? What does it take? And that was kind of like my approach to creating this tool. Yeah, still in the process, and hopefully I'll be able to show you guys how we can yeah, how it works. So at
Nice.
least phase one.
Yes, super exciting because I don't really hear people speaking about the identity, privacy, protection of data also in that space, and still ability to, without disclosing who we are, to share our behavior data so that we can
Yeah.
learn from our collective consciousness.
Yeah, if you hang out more into the DK ecosystem
Yes.
space, everybody talks about that.
Right.
There are
I
so
mean, I'm
different
referencing that without needing to
yeah,
specify the
there's so many
technology.
different projects, but
Right.
when we come out of these our niches, then just to give you an example, there were some data that shows a graph that shows that the deep in space actually grew as the DeSci movement grew, which
Yes.
is very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Surely, surely. I'm interested in also in RWAs and how the real world assets can go more into actually ownership of houses and potentially hospitals, and that's kind of the direction I'm looking for. These network states is like going forward more with the healthcare perspective rather than with even laws and governance perspective, so that people are actually united on their lifestyle and health choices. As you said, that by creating our own group of people that are reflecting our values, we can make a difference in our personality. So, how do you
Right.
personally decide for yourself or on the kind of people that you are attracted by, who you would like to be part of? How do you select the communities and DAOs and all these groups to be part of? How do you navigate that for yourself? How do you not go crazy with the amount of information?
Yeah, I usually choose the people as they choose me,
Okay.
meaning they how they treat me and makes my choice if I have them around me or not, and
Nice.
that's I think a simple process. I like to, and it feels great to collaborate with people that acknowledge my efforts, that can see me, and that in a way protect and want to see me win. And sometimes it's not as easy to identify who these people are in a group. But with time, time always tells you who people are in their intimate, part, in meaning at the intimate level, and who, and if they are good people to for you, right? And I always, I look at this objectively, and I understand that um, a person cannot be good for you, but it can be really good for someone else. And so we have to be